Rudy Giuliani launched a media blitz after Politico quoted him as telling a private dinner that, quote, "I know this is a horrible thing to say, but I do not believe the president loves America." At first, on Fox and Friends and Bloomberg TV, the former mayor seemed to be trying to walk it back.
What do you mean by that?
Well, first of all, I'm not questioning his patriotism. He's a patriot, I'm sure.
I shouldn't say that the president does or does not love anything or anyone. I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist, and he doesn't have one, and he doesn't need one.
But then, when confronted by Megyn Kelly, Giuliani doubled down.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to apologize for your comment?
Not at all. I want to repeat it. The reality is, from all that I can see of this president, all that I've heard of him, he apologizes for America. He criticizes America.
A lot of liberals don't believe in American exceptionalism, but that doesn't mean they don't love America.
Well, I don't feel it. I don't feel it. I don't feel this love of America.
Joining us now, Sharyl Attkisson, the former CBS News correspondent and author of the best-selling book Stonewalled. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard and a Fox News contributor. And Juan Williams, Fox News analyst and a columnist for The Hill. So you saw some of those interviews and the way Rudy's tone kind of changed. What do you think about the way the media have handled this and made this into a really mega story?
I think they have the right to do that. I think there are legitimate questions to be asked on all sides. As a media person, the question I ask, playing my typical substitution game, is, did the media ask the same sort of questions with the same vigor when President Obama, then candidate, suggested that President Bush was unpatriotic for presiding over an increase of $4 trillion in the debt? Did the media also pursue with the same sort of vigor whether candidate Obama wished to apologize and so on? So I don't know the answer to the question because I didn't cover it back then, but that's what I'm interested in.
Steve, liberal pundits have really been bashing Rudy for crossing a line here and challenging Obama's motivation. Some would say patriotism. But conservative commentators, I feel, have been kind of tepid rather than rallying behind him or just saying what others said is equally bad or worse. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, there's certainly what Rudy Giuliani said. There's no question that he's speaking for a chunk of the Republican base, of the conservative base. There are easy ways to handle it. I think the Republican presidential candidates who've been asked about this have handled it obviously in very different ways. Some of them sort of not backing off or not disagreeing with Giuliani
but do
publicly.
you see the media as, you know, giving the proper play to, you know, some pretty incendiary comments by an incredibly famous political figure, or do you think it's being blown up a bit?
How long has it been since he's been in office? I mean, it's been, what, almost 15 years?
But he's America's mayor.
I think it's a story. I think it's a one-day story. Maybe it's a two-day story. Is it a 5 or 6 day story? I mean, it's not like there's no other news out there. You've got these Iranian negotiations. You've got Obama, 800,000 people with Obamacare. There's so many other things that people could be, that journalists could be focusing on. And to give this much attention to this question seems to be over the top.
I thought what got less attention than what was reported by Politico was this quote from Rudy. He wasn't brought up the way you were brought up and I was brought up, through love of this country. So why has this touched the media nerve?
Oh, that's a big nerve, because I think it's divisive. I think that it plays to the idea that if you are not brought up in a certain way and have certain values and taught certain values, and in fact he says this, if you are not brought up in a way that you are taught that love of America is a requirement, then you can't be truly a patriot. I was like, what's that about? I don't know what that means, because you can be brought up in all kinds of ways. You can be brought up as Obama was at times in Indonesia, come back and still love your country. I think you can be gay and love your country. I think you can be different. And of course then, you know, it goes without saying, race is just, you know, an explosive issue.
And speaking of race, I mean, I'm not bringing race into it. I don't think what he said was racist. It might have been certainly questionable for a political figure to say about the president, but New York Times interview, Giuliani brought it up, and he calls that implication a joke, since Obama was brought up by a white mother, a white grandfather, went to white schools, and most of this he learned from white people. So I guess Juan's right. Race is forming the backdrop here.
Well, the president doesn't hesitate to talk about the race of his parents and family members, so depending on the context, it can be perfectly legitimate to discuss. I'm not sure whether that impacts one way or another in this controversy.
Let me move now to the question that's been debated on Fox a lot, and we've talked about on this show, and that is whether the president and his administration should talk about Islamic terrorists. We'll talk more about the president's take on this on the other side, but Eric Holder coming out and taking a swipe at this network, saying, you know, if Fox didn't talk about this, Fox wouldn't have anything to talk about. Surprise you that he would turn this into an anti-Fox argument?
Look, the sun rose this morning. I had a cup of coffee. Eric Holder takes a shot at Fox. This is what Eric Holder does. He's trying to shift the blame. He wants to pretend like Fox News is the only one who believes this. People on Fox News. I mean, I do find it funny that he labels Fox News in general as the problem, as if there aren't differing views on Fox News. Look, I think the administration wants to pretend that this is just a Fox versus the administration problem, when in reality they're getting questions from a lot of different people at different media outlets. I mean, you've seen in the press briefings with Josh Earnest, questions about why they're so insistent on avoiding Islam.
It has gotten a lot of attention on Fox, but the New York Times did a story on it the other day, this whole linguistic question. So it is more than just a Fox News story. Agreed?
I agreed. I think Fox has a preoccupation with it, if that's what you're asking me. But it's also true that CNN, MSNBC have done it, and the New York Times has done it. And if you look at polls, that's what I do as a political analyst.
What's the nature of the preoccupation in your view?
The preoccupation is we hit it time and time again. We go back to it as a key element, I think, of the right's criticism of President Obama is the failure to use that language. And then it becomes a semantic battle at times, but it suggests something larger, but it's never quite said. But I think that the idea that all these liberal media organizations have said it confirms that Fox is onto something. And I'll say one more thing, that the polls...
Can you say one more thing on the other side of the break, because I got to get a commercial in here. But we're going to continue this conversation, the president responding to the pundits and about the way he talks about terrorism. And later, Scott Walker tells the Washington Post he doesn't know whether President Obama is a Christian. Is that a fair question?